He gave them a black card and disappeared. 3 women, 1 test, no rules. To the world, Elias Mercer was untouchable, a billionaire carved from steel and code. But power had never answered his quietest question: who would stay if he gave them everything, and then walked away? So, one rainy night above Seattle, he did the unthinkable. He handed 3 women in his life a card with no limit: Celine, his lover who loved the spotlight; Ava, his assistant who worshipped ambition; and Naomi, the maid whose name he'd never really spoken. He told them only this: do whatever you want. Then he vanished. Celine chased diamonds. Ava bought status. But Naomi bought something no amount of money could measure. Something that made Elias fall to his knees in the silence of his penthouse, not from loss, but from awakening. He thought he was testing them, but the truth was testing him. Stay. Because what Naomi bought didn't cost a cent, and yet it changed everything. Elias Mercer built a world that ran on his code. The city bowed to his name, printed it on every magazine cover, whispered it in every deal. He owned towers of glass, a yacht that slept under the stars, and an empire that never stopped growing. People called him a visionary. They never called him lonely. At night, his penthouse shimmered with light, yet felt hollow as an empty cathedral. The air smelled of new leather and silence. He could buy anything: a painting, a company, a life abroad, except someone who stayed without reason. Money echoed in every corner, but it couldn't fill the quiet between heartbeats. Outside, the rain traced slow lines down the window. Inside, Elias listened to nothing but the sound of his own breathing. Behind all that success, there was only distance, a life that sparkled in public and faded in private. Beneath the neon glow of Seattle, he heard nothing but the wind of his own solitude. He often remembered his mother's words: "Don't marry the one who makes you shine, Elias. Marry the one who makes you deep." She had been gone for years, but her voice still lived somewhere between regret and truth. Elias looked around and saw faces that smiled for profit. Friends who praised him when the cameras flashed. Women who adored him when the gifts arrived. He was admired by many, yet known by no one. It wasn't betrayal that hurt him most. It was the emptiness that followed every conversation. He wondered if anyone had ever loved him without wanting something in return. The thought cut deeper than loneliness itself. That night, he sat in his study surrounded by trophies of his own making. Everything gleamed. Nothing felt alive. Somewhere inside, a quiet voice whispered that something had to change. 3 women defined the rhythm of his days. Celine Hart, a model turned influencer. She lived for cameras, for crowds, for the sparkle of attention. Her love was loud and fleeting. Ava Collins, his executive assistant. Sharp mind, colder heart. She handled his world like a chessboard, every move calculated. And Naomi Brooks, the maid who never looked him in the eye unless spoken to. Her voice was soft, her presence invisible, her kindness unannounced. Elias often wondered how 3 women could orbit the same man and yet live in separate galaxies. Celine represented beauty that blinded. Ava symbolized ambition that consumed. Naomi stood for calm, the quiet corner of a storm. He realized they were reflections of his own life: glamour, power, and peace. 3 things that never seemed to coexist. That night, the rain didn't stop. Elias sat by the window, a notebook open, 3 names written across a blank page: Celine, Ava, Naomi. He stared at them for a long time. What did they truly value? Was there anyone left in his world untouched by greed? He reached for his phone and called James, his head of security. "I'm giving each of them access to my resources," Elias said quietly. "No limits, no instructions. I want you to watch what they do with it." A pause on the line. "Everything?" "Everything," he replied. When he hung up, Elias leaned back, the thunder rolling over the city. He wasn't testing their loyalty, he was searching for the truth. In a life built on control, this was his first act of surrender. Morning light spilled across Elias's desk. 3 black envelopes lay in a neat line, each marked with a single name. Celine, Ava, Naomi. Inside, a limitless credit card. Matte, heavy, silent. The air in the room felt charged, as if the cards themselves carried judgment. He ran his thumb along the edge of one envelope. It was strange, giving away what people spent their lives chasing. Power, freedom, choice. And yet, that was exactly what he wanted to see, what freedom meant to each of them. The desk lamp glowed in warm gold, reflecting off the polished glass. Elias looked at his reflection, seeing not a billionaire, but a man about to test the last pieces of his own heart. He placed the envelopes in his briefcase, one beside another, perfectly aligned. 3 symbols of truth, waiting to expose the lies beneath affection. Outside, thunder rolled again, soft but sure. Seattle was gray, restless, like him. Tomorrow, the cards would find their way to their owners. Tonight, they were just promises waiting to be broken. The rooftop glowed with city lights. Celine Hart arrived in a silk coat, her perfume trailing behind her like a performance. Elias handed her the envelope. "For you," he said quietly. Her eyes widened. "Is this what I think it is?" 3 days, he replied. "No limits." Celine laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You're the best, baby." Before he could answer, she pulled out her phone. The flash burst. She kissed his cheek, turning the moment into a story for thousands of strangers. "New day, new blessings," she wrote with a diamond emoji. Elias watched her face light up. Not for him, but for the screen. Money had always been her mirror. Now it was just brighter. When she walked away, he stayed a moment longer under the cold wind. He had given her everything she claimed to love. He wasn't sure she had even heard the silence between them. Ava Collins entered the office in her usual rhythm. Precise, calm, unreadable. Elias handed her the envelope. She tilted her head, curious. "What's this?" "A thank you," he said. "Use it as you wish." She smiled, but her eyes didn't soften. "Unlimited? How strategic." Her tone was light, almost playful. Minutes later, she was already typing on her phone, rescheduling meetings, booking reservations. Outside his glass wall, Seattle shimmered like data. Constant, moving, fragile. He knew Ava respected efficiency, not emotion. To her, this was not a gift. It was an opportunity. As she left, her heels echoed across the marble floor. Each step sounded like calculation. In that sound, Elias heard ambition disguised as grace. He didn't resent her. He simply understood her too well. Naomi Brooks found her envelope on the kitchen counter beside her task list. Her hands hesitated before touching it. Inside, the black card gleamed like something forbidden. She wiped her palms on her apron and walked to Elias's study. "Mr. Mercer," she said softly, standing at the door. "I think this was left by mistake." Elias looked up, surprised. "No mistake, Naomi. It's for you." She shook her head. "I don't need anything, sir." He smiled faintly. "Then buy something you want." Her brow furrowed. "I wouldn't know where to start." "Start anywhere," he said gently. 3 days, no limits. She nodded, unsure, clutching the envelope like a fragile secret. When she left, Elias exhaled slowly. It was the first time that morning he had seen honesty, and it frightened him. The next day unfolded in 3 separate worlds. Celine moved through designer stores, laughter echoing as cameras followed. She bought handbags, champagne, a yacht party for strangers who called her Queen. Every receipt was proof she existed. Ava's schedule was sharper. Spa, fittings, a rooftop mixer filled with investors. She called it networking, but every smile was a negotiation. Every glance, a future favor. And Naomi? She went to a small grocery 2 blocks from her apartment. She bought rice, bread, fresh flowers, and a pack of diapers. Then she stopped at a hospital and quietly paid off a neighbor's medical bill. 3 cards. 3 choices. Money had spoken, and each voice revealed a different soul. Elias watched from afar, the truth beginning to whisper through the noise. By evening, the first reports arrived. James, his head of security, spoke in the calm tone of a man used to secrets. "She spent $32,000 today, mostly on jewelry and a private yacht," he said. Elias nodded once. "Go on." "Miss Collins booked a luxury suite, a stylist, and 2 high-profile meetings. She's attending a dinner with potential investors tonight." He paused. "And Naomi Brooks?" James hesitated. "She spent $87. Groceries, some flowers, and 4 takeout meals given to men on 8th Street. Elias leaned back, eyes fixed on the images. Celine smiling for the camera, champagne glass raised. Ava shaking hands under rooftop lights. Naomi standing in the rain, handing a warm box of food to a stranger who bowed in thanks. No words were needed. In silence, the truth felt louder than applause. Money had revealed more than loyalty ever could. That night, sleep stayed far away. Elias sat in his darkened study, the city flickering beyond the window. On his screen, footage played on a loop. Naomi standing outside a small hospital speaking to a nurse, handing over the card. He turned the volume down, letting the quiet fill the room. "She didn't even use 1%, James had said. The sentence wouldn't leave his head. He poured a glass of scotch but didn't drink it. His reflection in the window looked older, smaller, almost ashamed. The world had taught him to buy, to measure, to calculate. Naomi had spent a single day undoing all of that. He wondered how someone with so little could give so much. It was the first time in years that something in him stirred. Not guilt, not pity, but a feeling he could barely name. The following day, Celine's party filled every screen. Laughter over music, gold balloons, wine spilling like celebration. She wore a white dress that shimmered under yacht lights, surrounded by people Elias had never met. He watched from his phone, the sound muted. Her posts came one after another. # rich life. # spoiled. # blessed. Every smile looked practiced, every toast empty. He remembered how she once said, "Money doesn't change people, it only shows them." Now he understood what she meant. The night stretched long, and the rain outside sounded like applause for everything fake. He closed his phone and set it aside. No anger, only exhaustion. Celine's joy had no space for him in it. Somewhere deep down, he already knew what tomorrow's goodbye would feel like. Ava Collins moved through her world like a strategist. That evening, she met with executives from rival firms, speaking with calm authority. She called herself the closest advisor to Elias Mercer. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. By morning, a new post appeared on her LinkedIn page. "Power isn't given," it read, "it's taken." 1,000 likes followed. Elias saw it between reports and said nothing. He admired her intelligence once, maybe even envied her certainty. But now he understood her ambition wasn't loyalty. It was hunger in disguise. He turned off his screen. For years, he had surrounded himself with people who wanted to climb higher, not people who wanted to stand beside him. That realization landed harder than betrayal itself. Morning brought a new report. Short, simple, impossible to ignore. Naomi Brooks visited a grocery again, then a hospital, then the old orphanage on 6th Street. She used the card to buy books, medicine, fruit, and toys. There were no selfies, no signatures, no records of gratitude. Only a photo. Naomi sitting on the floor, feeding a small child with gentle patience. Elias stared at the image. The light from the window behind her touched her face like a quiet blessing. There was no audience, no motive, just a woman doing good because she could. He exhaled slowly. For the first time in years, he felt something more than control, a warmth that cracked through the cold walls of his success. He whispered to himself, "She spent everything, on everyone but herself." The sun rose pale over Seattle, the sky washed in soft silver. Elias hadn't moved from his chair. The last image of Naomi still lingered on his monitor. Her smile, small and honest, had disarmed everything he thought he knew about people. He whispered the words his mother once told him: "Kindness doesn't need a reason." For so long, he had mistaken noise for love, presence for loyalty, beauty for worth. Now, a woman with nothing had shown him what everything looked like. In a world built on appearances, she was the only thing real. He walked to the window and watched the city stir below. Every car, every light, every ambition felt small. For the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt like truth. Elias turned from the glass and straightened his posture. He knew what he needed to do next. Face them, not as a billionaire, but as a man searching for honesty. 3 women, 3 truths. And tonight, all masks would fall. By dusk, the dining room glowed in gold and glass. Candles flickered between crystal glasses. The table was set for 6, but only 4 seats waited to be filled. Elias adjusted a plate that didn't need adjusting. He wasn't nervous, he was aware of what this night meant. Each card had done its job. Now it was time for consequences. He told James to prepare no security, no distractions. He wanted no witnesses, no control, only truth. He poured a single glass of wine and watched the flame bend in the reflection. This was his storm before calm, the confrontation he had avoided his whole life. Outside, rain returned, steady and soft. Inside, silence gathered its weight. He breathed once, slowly, as footsteps echoed from the hall. The first guest had arrived. Celine came first, wrapped in a red dress that shimmered like a warning. She smiled, but her eyes carried impatience. Ava arrived next, sleek in black, every move deliberate, every glance assessing. And at last, Naomi, in a cream blouse and floral skirt, entered quietly, eyes lowered, unsure if she belonged. Elias looked at them, 3 women who had unknowingly revealed his world. Celine, the noise; Ava, the ambition; Naomi, the calm. They sat at the long table, distance between them measured not in inches, but in intent. The chandelier above hummed faintly, light reflecting off gold-rimmed plates. Elias's voice was even when he spoke. "Thank you for coming." No one answered. Celine poured herself wine. Ava checked her watch. Naomi folded her hands in her lap. In that silence, Elias felt everything. Beauty, tension, truth, converging in one fragile moment. The storm was ready. Elias placed his glass down and met their eyes one by one. 3 days ago, he began, I gave each of you a card. It wasn't a gift. It was a mirror. The room froze. Celine's smirk faltered. Ava's posture stiffened. Naomi's breathing caught. Elias continued. I didn't want gratitude or loyalty. I wanted truth, to see who I was really sharing my life with. He paused, letting the weight of silence do the talking. I've seen what money means to each of you. His tone wasn't angry, only measured. This dinner is not punishment, it's clarity. The chandelier flickered as if reacting to the tension. No one moved. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled again. Celine laughed nervously, trying to lighten the air. Elias, darling, you make it sound so serious. It is, he said simply. Elias turned to her first. Celine, he said, his voice steady. You spent $86,000 in 3 days. You mocked waiters, tipped a man $500 and called him a peasant. You filmed strangers for entertainment. Her smile froze. That's none of your business. It became my business when you showed me who you are. She stood up, the chair scraping hard against marble. You spied on me? I watched, he said softly. And I learned. Color rushed to her face. So, what if I enjoyed myself? You told me to spend it. I told you to show me what mattered. For a second, no one breathed. The woman who once commanded every room now looked small, fragile under the chandelier's glow. You're unbelievable, she whispered. Then she grabbed her clutch and stormed out. The door closed behind her, sharp as a gunshot. Elias didn't look away. The empire of illusion had just lost its queen. When the echo of Celine's heels faded, silence returned, heavier than before. Elias turned to Ava. She met his gaze, composed, unflinching. "You were different," he said quietly. "You didn't waste money, you didn't party, but you used the card to climb higher." Her brow lifted. "Is ambition a sin now?" "No," Elias replied, "but deception is." He leaned forward. "You weren't investing in me. You were investing in your exit." For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then her smile thinned. "I've given you 5 years," she said. "I built your empire, cleaned up your mistakes, handled the fallout from every woman who left you." Her voice cracked, but she held her posture. "I know," he said softly, "and I'm grateful. But loyalty isn't ownership." The flicker of hurt crossed her eyes before pride buried it. She straightened her blazer and nodded once. "I see. The experiment's over." Without another word, she turned and walked away, heels tapping a cold rhythm down the hall. Elias watched her vanish into the shadows of the house. Ambition had always been her language. Love was one she never learned to speak. The air in the dining room felt thinner now. Only Naomi remained, small against the long table. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "I thought you were letting me go." Elias blinked. "Why would you think that?" She hesitated. "You never invite me here." Then suddenly, a gift. A dinner. It felt like goodbye. He shook his head slowly. "No, Naomi, I'm not letting you go." He paused, voice low. "I'm letting myself see." Her eyes lifted, uncertain. The light from the candle trembled between them. "I didn't know this was a test," she whispered. "It wasn't meant to be cruel," he said. "I just needed to know if anyone saw me beyond the surface." Naomi swallowed hard. "I only did what felt right." "And that," Elias said, "is exactly what I needed to see." The words hung between them. Fragile, honest, alive. For the first time that night, the silence didn't hurt. It healed. The dining room now looked like an afterthought of chaos. Empty glasses, half-burned candles, chairs left askew. Only 2 figures remained. Elias sat back, eyes unfocused on the fading flame. Naomi kept her head bowed, unsure whether to leave or stay. Outside, the rain softened to a whisper. The chandelier's light flickered once and steadied, as if the house itself exhaled. No words passed between them for a long while. Every truth had been spoken, every wound uncovered. Elias reached for the wine but stopped halfway. He wasn't thirsty. He was tired. Not of people, but of pretending. Naomi folded her hands together, her breath slow and deliberate. It was the stillness after a storm, the kind that hums before peace finds its way back. They didn't look at each other, but they both knew. Something had shifted. The room no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a beginning, quiet and unplanned. Later that night, Elias found himself walking toward the servants' wing, a place he had never entered. He stopped outside Naomi's door and knocked lightly. She opened it, startled but calm. "Mr. Mercer?" "Elias," he corrected gently. "Just Elias." Her room was small but alive. Soft curtains, fresh flowers, a photo of her mother on the dresser. He looked around, surprised by the warmth. "You keep this place beautiful." Naomi smiled faintly. "It's all I have that's mine." He nodded, letting the truth of that sink in. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said. "I just wanted to talk." She gestured to the small chair by the window. "You can sit, if you like." He did, quietly. For the first time, he felt like he was standing inside someone's heart, unguarded, unpolished, real. Elias sat forward, elbows on his knees. "I owe you an apology," he said. Naomi frowned softly. "For what?" "For dragging you into my test. For turning life into an experiment." "You didn't hurt me," she said after a pause. "You just forgot to look." The words struck deeper than accusation. He looked at her, truly looked. The tired eyes, the gentle posture, the quiet strength. "You've been kind in a world that rewards cruelty," he said. She shook her head. Kindness isn't strategy, it's survival. Elias exhaled. For years, I measured people by what they could give me. Then you came along and gave without keeping count. She lowered her gaze. That's just how I was raised. Your mother? Naomi nodded. She used to say, love isn't something you own, it's something you live. For the first time in a long while, Elias smiled. Not as a man who'd won, but as one who'd finally understood. Days turned into quiet mornings filled with purpose. Elias asked Naomi to help him design a new project, a foundation focused on dignity, not charity. She hesitated at first. I'm not qualified for something like that, she said. You are, Elias replied. You understand what giving means. Together, they spent hours planning, visiting shelters, speaking with families, asking what people truly needed. Naomi taught him something no business mentor ever had, how to give without measuring the return. She said, when you give and count it, it becomes a transaction. When you give and forget it, it becomes love. Elias began showing up differently, softer, quieter, still learning. In every meeting, Naomi's calm guided him. When others saw cost, she saw people. When others saw loss, she saw life. He realized change didn't start with money. It started with heart. And, for the first time, he had one worth listening to. The penthouse no longer felt like a monument. It began to sound like a home. Laughter echoed through rooms once built for silence. The cold marble floors were softened with rugs and flowers. Naomi tended a small garden on the rooftop. Herbs, wildflowers, even a lemon tree she swore would survive the Seattle rain. Elias joined her every weekend, pretending to know how to plant. She'd laugh when he got the soil wrong, and he'd laugh because it felt human. The scent of earth and mint replaced the sterile polish of his past life. Every detail changed, not because of wealth, but because of warmth. The house that once displayed success now carried simplicity. One evening, as they stood watching the sunset, Elias whispered, I used to live above the world, but never inside it. Naomi smiled. Now you're growing roots. And he was, in every sense that mattered. Weeks later, Elias brought Naomi to an investor luncheon, her first time in that world. She wore a simple navy dress, unsure of her place among suits and diamonds. As they entered, eyes turned. Elias leaned close. Let them see what real looks like. At first, Naomi said little, but when someone asked about their foundation, she spoke softly about the children they helped, the families rebuilding their lives. The room grew quiet. Even the most powerful men leaned in to listen. There was no performance in her words, only truth. Her humility shamed their arrogance, her sincerity cut through their numbers. When she finished, applause broke out, not loud, but genuine. On the drive home, she sighed. I don't belong in rooms like that. Elias smiled. You belong in every room that needs a heart. And in that moment, she finally believed him. Years passed. The Mercer Brooks Foundation became more than a name. It became a movement. Children laughed in schools they had rebuilt. Families found warmth in homes they restored. And in the center of it all, Elias and Naomi stood side by side, partners in purpose. Their home overflowed with life. Neighbors, friends, even the occasional orphan who called the garden theirs. Elias often sat on the porch at dusk, listening to the hum of laughter through open windows. I used to build empires, he said one evening, smiling. Now I build homes. Naomi rested her hand over his. You built more than that, she whispered. You built peace. He looked at her, the woman who once cleaned his floors now cleaning the dust from his soul. And he knew. He had finally come home. The story ends where all truths begin, with kindness. Elias once gave away his wealth to test what people valued. But in doing so, he discovered something greater than value, meaning. Naomi never asked for riches, yet gave him the one thing he had never earned, peace. Their love didn't arrive in fireworks or fame. It arrived quietly, through choices made when no one was watching. And maybe that's what real wealth is. Not what you own, but what you give that outlives you. So, if this story touched you, take a moment to share it. Because somewhere, someone still believes kindness has no reason. And maybe your heart is the proof they need to keep believing. He gave his wealth to see what they valued, but found that love, once given freely, is the only thing that truly multiplies.